You're coming over as a South African rugby player, okay? There's a huge expectation. You're playing against not only the team, you're trying playing against the whole province. There's no transition time here. It's from the get-go.
Up until 1994, I had no clue what rugby was all about. Nelson Mandela supported this. We then got in, growing up in a township house in Pietermaritzburg. It then allowed me to then make those bold steps.
You're obviously playing a contact sport that injuries happen. And even when the day comes, I can tell you very much, you still don't know how to deal with it.
Who do you work for? I say Nando's. The whole demeanor in that immigration officer just changes.
The big part that you fall back on, definitely, there's no doubt, your family. When the push comes to shove, we South African supporters.
Am I moving because I'm running away from pain, or am I moving towards a purpose? If it's not going to scare you, it's not going to grow you.
Welcome to Winning the Away Game podcast. Today I'm coming to you from sunny Barcelona and very excited about today's episode. Flip, are you ready for another spectacular episode?
Justina's, how's it? Yeah, we've got two great guests. Shark stalwart through and through, Sharks man. He's represented Ulster, Munster, Leon, and even as we suddenly realized, Biarritz as well. I've got a big thanks to him. He helped me across the line for my first and only Springbok try. We have BJ Botha.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
And with him, another export from KZN, somebody who works for my favorite brand other than the Springboks, which is Nando's. Anybody who follows me online knows that I'm completely and utterly obsessed about Nando's. So, Linda, super excited to have you and to chat a little bit about your journey as well.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be here.
Okay, so our first question we always love to ask guests is, tell us a little story about your favorite Springbok moment, whether that's a big one or a small personal one, whatever. When you think about your favorite Springbok story, what do you think about? Tell us, bring us into your world and tell us about it from your perspective. Linda, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. So, brought up in South Africa, in Pietermaritzburg. I will admit to everyone here, up until 1994, I had no clue what rugby was all about. All I know, it's a sport played by white people, and it's a tough sport, and it's guys that are big and strong that play the sport. That's all I know. And I really go back to 1994, right? So 1994 was the year that we had the World Cup in South Africa. Mandela did an amazing job. He said, how can I bring this nation together? And by bringing the nation together, let's do it through sport. Now, what it did to someone like me, coming from the background that I come from, that have no idea about this rugby, and also it was intimidating because it was the so-called white man's sport. Because we know we're hosting the country, Nelson Mandela supported the sport. We then got in, and I mean, I was 18 or so at the time. We all got in as a community to start to learn the sport. The little that we knew, we got involved. We said we got the World Cup coming into the country, and that for me is a golden moment. And that was the moment where I remember my community, my friends, my family coming together and watching a sport that we've never watched before. So that for me is a golden moment, my first entry into the sport. And then from there, I got involved in watching the Springboks, and then fast forward where I am, like a proper fan living in the UK.
Yeah, I would say mine is in the similar line. I think that highlight of 95 is across everyone's memories, and I think it's a great time, one of the biggest moments really. But I suppose I'll take it one back, and it was a semi-final against France, being from Durban, and knowing that it's been raining non-stop and it looks like we have to start building boats because we are all on our way out. And we're worrying about the game going forward, not about survival. And suddenly you get the guys on the pitch and they're sweeping the field, never seen before. And everyone's coming on board and there are things put down and plans in place. And we know that this game has to some way get and assist the community and the people and everything that reminds me of being South Africa, even back then. Coming through and making the game happen, which was a hell of an affair, as we know, and we got through. And I think that was the game for me. That was the critical part. Of course, we were facing old foes in the final, but yeah, that French game, it was a really dangerous side, and people don't really look as much back in what we faced there in that semi-final. It was a massive game, and I think it was just on the balance because of the fact of the French and the flair and the weather and everything about that. So that was a memory that. Definitely because it was at my old ground, Kings Park, and being there in person, and then obviously going on then to win it, and setting the tone as a 14, 15-year-old impression by his heroes.
Yeah, lovely.
Living in France, I wanted to ask you this actually last week and I forgot, but living in France, do the French still talk about that 1995 semi-final and what's there? What do they say?
So outside of 2023, 1995 is a very, very sensitive topic for them. There's rumors about Rolex watches that was given to the ref before, and Louis later it was cheating to actually clean the field, and the game should have been pulled off and whatnot. But actually made very good friends with some of the people, Laurent Caban and Olivier Merle, that played in that game. So if I want to trigger them a little bit, like I'm doing this week, walking around my Springbok jersey everywhere, I just bring up 1995.
I think. Both two players from that team returned to play for the Sharks, Lacroix and and they returned to come back there. And those guys are, I've met a few of the guys from back in the day, are top people.
Yeah, I think even Benazir played there as well.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. So BJ, you're a Durban boykie through and through. Grew up there, went to school there, played many of the big games. We reminisced a little bit about the rugby we played against each other. Tell us about your background. What built BJ? What made BJ today?
Well, I think it's intro in the sense of where I come from. My father was transferred quite a bit. We traveled quite a bit. We lived in Rustenburg, Newcastle. Then we actually spent some time in old Bloemies. Went to old small primary school there that everyone knows about, and kind of spent a few years there up until Standard 4 back in the day, and then moved to Durban. And then I think everything really changed for me. I think from a rugby perspective, it is really ingrained from my days in Bloem. And I felt that I wanted to still try and some way perform in the rugby field. And I think that was when you enjoyed it most. But this whole wave of literally of spending time on the beach and learning how to surf and all this other part took over. So my growing up was very much about being dropped off on the weekends at 5 o'clock in the morning, spending the whole day on the beach and then playing a rugby during the week. And we had a great time. I went to a small school, Kloof High School, which was really not one of the biggest schools. And then was finished off a post-matric at DHS, Durban High School. But yeah, I suppose my rugby was in a sense finding a way to kind of, in one sense, prove the system wrong with coming from a smaller rugby school and trying to be competitive with our little team. And then, I suppose in one sense, I got opportunities and they worked out. As they say, you have to be in the environment to kind of get your chance. And I think I was fortunate enough to be backed by a few coaches along the way. And then I had a special introduction to my club side, which is probably the change the game for me, Collegians in Durban. That was probably the key part for me, where I started playing club rugby there. We had a really magnificent team, and at times we had Henty Martins, Trevor Holstead, Wayne Farvey, these real kind of legends that you looked up to playing club rugby. And that then, I think, brought that whole periphery of this being impossible to the possible. And I think then things started looking a little bit more clearer, even though it was not nearly there. But at least it then was, this is where you have to do your hard work. And obviously great relationships built there and people that I'm still friends with today. So Durban is Durban for me. I love the kind of, it was great to be part of those long summers and tropical thunderstorms and the humid that you had to play in the February, March in Durban, which killed you. But I would say I'm Durban through and born there, but then kind of moved back full circle, as you do.
Wow. Talking about making the impossible possible, Linda, tell us a little bit about your origin story. I know you speak often about how your mother set you up for success as well. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a different story. So both my parents were blue collar workers back then in the 80s. Brought up with a lot of fear, brought up with a lot of hope, brought up with what's happening in South Africa in the late 80s. And I remember stories whereby to even talk politics was hush. Nobody talks politics. And the 90s for me was just a time of so much of joy, just so much of excitement, what's happening to South Africa. And if I look at what my parents have done, they definitely instilled hope, but they also gave us opportunities as best as they could. And when I say opportunities is my dad was super adventurous. For the community that I grew up, he took us to Cape Town. Now, guys, Cape Town was big. For little community kids to go in the early 90s to a trip to Cape Town was just like a wonderful experience. And then going to Zimbabwe for us, also in the early 90s, was just such an amazing experience because now we're crossing a border. We're going into another country. So life was hopeful. Life was exciting. As I mentioned, there were just so many things that we just didn't know what was going to happen in the early 90s. But, my parents, what they left with us is to study, work hard, have a great mindset, make a difference in other people's lives, and you benefit in some way. So when I think about my days growing up in that township house in Pietermaritzburg, KZN, getting a little bit of adventure that we did as children, it then allowed me to then make those bold steps from moving from Pietermaritzburg, going to Johannesburg. And that time, Johannesburg was called the City of Gold. When you come from a small town that I did, going to Johannesburg, you're going into the big city. And so when I made the move to London three plus years ago, that was even moving to a bigger and amazing opportunity. So if I look at those movements, it was starting in those humble years. But did I ever imagine, like 40 years ago, that I would be moving over to a global stage, moving over to London? Not at all. But I'm thankful for what my parents did. That hope they gave us. Yeah. So that's where I am now.
That's beautiful. It's such a rich history.
BJ, you obviously started out then in the Sharks, became successful, won the World Cup with the Boks, and at one point you had to make a decision whether you want to move to Ireland. Tell us a little bit about that shift.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I even look back at myself. When I look back at my Shark days, I almost felt like I wasn't really under contract. I almost felt like this is not a job for me. It's like when I look back and this is what I grew up to do, in the sense of enjoy playing for this franchise. That's all I want to do. Like I just grew up, as I said, watching the Banana Boys, watching the 90s, sitting on those little bunkies there behind the poles and arriving late and then running around playing touch rugby on the field at halftime. That's what it was about. So when I had this opportunity to come overseas, it's like, okay, now this is actually the real deal. I'm actually signing a contract here, in the sense of like making a commitment for a period of time, getting paid to play rugby as such, if you want to call it that. And it's you only look at it down the line. It comes in the sense of an opportunity, as they say. These ones don't come across very often. But I look back now and I still think, what decision, on what did I base it and stuff. But come and seeing myself now, it was definitely for the better, in the sense of my family and where we were going and heading. However, it was definitely a cut short my dream of playing for the Sharks for many, many years. But we know this is a job in a sense. And look, that transition made it a little bit easier because my wife was 8 months pregnant. So we were coming over, we already had something that was going to be imminently arriving, and took the whole missing South Africa transition a little bit away from that, even though it was a big shift. But yeah, that really kept us exciting. And then obviously landing in Ulster, Ulster was rebuilding. They had a kind of successful years up until the year, I think, before I arrived, and then they were trying to rebuild again. with new coaches, new players coming in. Robbie Dyke was another 8th man that arrived with me at the same time. And obviously that opened the doors to all the South Africans that played for Ulster. But we had a real rebuilding phase. We were still very much in the kind of grounds that were being used as temporary facilities. And you could see that this place also was in transition, which was great to be part of. But it took some time to kind of get to that place. But yeah, I suppose I being for a small town, I lived in Kloof, so it was a small town where I lived in Hillcrest and Kloof, and coming to Europe, it was a big change for us. We were now on our own small little family and dealing with the challenges not only to perform on the field, but also in one sense build your life off the field.
It's interesting hearing you guys both from Durban talking about Durban being a small place and going to I went to school at Bloem. Durban was sort of like this mystical, the last English front.
Yeah.
No. We're not from Durban. I said I'm from Kloof, Hillcrest. There's a big difference, okay? all the Sharks Oaks were like, when are you going to get your passport to cross the border to get up to Kloof, Hillcrest? I'm like, listen. It was enjoyable looking down on Durban from the top when you could see all that kind of humidity sitting in the cool areas of the highway. But no, it was small town community living. But yeah, I think it built something in you going forward there. It gave you a network and a community that you could kind of always rely on.
Yeah, Linda, so you bear the Nando's flag quite proudly everywhere, and they were the reason you moved from Johannesburg to the UK initially, keeping that South African culture strong. Yeah. How do you guys do it at Nando's? How are you so good?
Oh, yeah. That's a beautiful thing of belonging to a brand that's got South African roots that has gone to 24 countries around the world. And I made this move. It was the UK. And having that in the back of your mind, knowing that you can be carrying your South African flag wherever you go was just special for me. And I'll tell you a story. So I'm on a skilled worker visa in the UK. And every time you go to that immigration officer, he looks at that green mamba of yours, and then he has to ask you a whole lot of questions. And he'll ask you questions. What are you doing here? I said, okay, now I'm working here. And then he says, what do you do? You give him your job, and he's got that serious look, and he's stern looking. Yes, he's profiling me. I know he's profiling me. It's okay. And then he says, who do you work for? And as soon as I say Nando's, the whole demeanor in that immigration officer just changes. It changes. Oh, you work for Nando? Oh my word, my favorite meal is this. My flavor is this. The guy starts talking to you more than you were talking to him. So that's just so wonderful, and how powerful like the brand is. And then I remember when I was applying for my US visa, this must have been about 3 years ago, just before I could relocate. I had to renew my US visa. And I got into an officer there that you could see his job is not to give you the visa. Now, I'm talking about 3 years ago, and I'm not talking about now, right? But and rightfully so, because he wants to check everything. He wants to check your bank statements. He wants to check your letter of employment. He wants to check your family. He wants to check that you're coming back to the country. He goes through all my documentation, and I could see with the people that were in front of me, this guy is not the most friendliest person. Like, I think he is incentivized not to give you a visa. I get to my turn, and then he skips through, and then he says, oh, you work for Nando's. Oh, I love Machu Picchu when I go to DC. I says, okay. And then he starts asking me, why do you not have Machu Picchu here in South Africa? It completely changed. The guy stopped going through all the pages, just stopped. Okay, so application gone through. So it shows the power of the brand. So yeah, it's powerful to work with an amazing brand like this.
Yeah, it's amazing how that changes, though. And what I love about Nando's is it's both embodies this innate South African spirit, but also the success of a South African brand around the world. And I mean, the Springboks obviously is a phenomenal brand like that. So BJ landing in Ireland, being a Springbok World Cup winner, how did that affect your integration there into the community?
Yeah, I think it did help definitely in one sense, but in the other sense, there was a huge expectation. I think that's what the one thing you get about this. Like, I talk about some of the guys that I'm that I'm mentoring now and helping through, when you come overseas, you realize that whether you've not become a Springbok yet, or you're from a smaller school, you're coming over as a South African rugby player. Okay? There's a huge expectation now, not only now, and it's the same thing with, I suppose, with a brand that you're representing. There's an expectation to this, okay? And it has to, and there's no transition time here. It's from the get-go. You don't have any times to kind of think about this is now transition time. You've got a few games or whatever the case may be. So, look, you had to hit the ground running, and thankfully it worked out for me. I think that's the upside. When it does work and it goes for you, then it does take off. And I was thankful for the support around the club. It was Northern Ireland, which I was told to be from the get-go. It wasn't Ireland, and playing for one of obviously the four Irish unions. But yeah, Ulster had its own history and learned that. And you show that you need to buy in one sense. It was this buying in and showing you part of that, but then also from an individual to bring your performance, because as we know, with the team aspect of it. So I had a lot of work to do in that aspect to learn the certain parts of how the team does play and how you fit into that. But yeah, I suppose in simple terms, sometimes it is easier being up front than the back, and your job is quite straightforward. Just take the scrum up and half the job is done. So in that aspect, you did the talking on the ground, on the field. I think that's when things become tricky if you don't. I think if you don't perform, then things do start running off that. So I think I was given some good advice. But yeah, it wasn't easy. I mean, the guys went on, the team that I was part of in 2008, the guys went on to win the Currie Cup. I missed my past teammates, guys that I've been playing with, guys like Johan Miller and these guys that I've been playing with since I was 20 years old, and winning these trophies together. Yeah, it wasn't easy, but there were other kind of areas that we were there for. And it took some time to kind of get some ascendancy on that. But yeah, it wasn't easy. It was just, I suppose, one part that I was again there to do a job for the team, and then obviously, as it is with the team aspects of it, you definitely, the more you put in off the field as well, it does definitely put you in a better place longer term, because back then it wasn't like now open gates. It was still quite new, and players were not really coming to Ireland. I think there might have only been one or two guys in Ireland back then, and then CJ van Linda followed to Leinster, etc., etc. But yeah, it was relatively new then, especially players coming to Ireland.
We've had some interesting games there in Ulster. And remember, when you're driving into the stadium, you have to walk in. It's like a little aisle. The people are quite hospitable around that spot. That's
changed now. It's actually funny enough, they call it that there's like an arch you had to walk through, and they were waiting for, and I think it's become too nice now. I think they built now a stadium that's obviously is top, and the facilities are obviously needed. It's not that wasn't needed, and sponsorships and stuff, but yeah, that old murky grey that matched the weather, and the people that have been having pints since 1 o'clock, and that's what it was about. And I think that's not missing, but there was a great arch. I'll never forget. It's a clock on the arch. As you say, you remember it. And yeah, that's what makes it special. These areas that you go, it's not maybe you find when you arrive in Ulster, you're playing against not only the team, you're playing against the whole province, the supporters, everything is coming at you. So it's not easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing when you play those away games and the crowd, and you feel like the ref and everybody is against you, and then something actually goes wrong, and it makes it even harder. So, Linda, what was the biggest challenge for you, either when you moved to Joburg, which from Durban or Pietermaritzburg feels like a different country, and then moving to the UK as well? What's been the biggest obstacles for you to overcome?
I think the biggest one for me is our comfort. And when I mean by comfort, when I think about Pietermaritzburg, my parents were there, my support network was there, the way we do certain things. And I remember when I was moving, when I had to finally when I made the decision to move over to London, and the thought that was going through my head, is, oh, I'm going to miss my maid. Oh, I'm going to miss the warm weather. Oh, I'm going to miss my friends. Oh, I'm going to miss the fancy restaurants that we have in South Africa. And because I love hiking and I love being outdoors, I said, oh, I'm just going to miss just going hiking with my friends and just enjoying our outdoor activities. I had so many things that I said I'm going to miss, that I really started to doubt my decision. I really, really doubted my decision. But when I look back, those things had to come. All those fears and uncertainties for me not to move had to come to like say, don't go, because you got all these comforts. You live a certain life. You get into your nice fancy 4x4 and you move from place to place. And I remember that first trip because I got my job during COVID, just on the ends of COVID. And I could only really travel over to the UK towards the end of 22. And I already signed my contract and I'm moving earlier on in the year. And I get into the UK. I'm already moving. I haven't been to the UK 3 years prior to that. So I even forgot how to use the underground system. It was like I have to go learn all the stuff. And I remember coming out of Clapham Junction, which is close to Clapham Junction Station, out of our office. And I just get out of the station and this massive wind just blew and it was so cold. This was in November. I told myself, my God, what have I decided? What have I done? It's cloudy. It's so cold. It's so dreary. What have I done? And that was then. Now I'm so used to it because what I learned is, if it doesn't stretch you, if it doesn't make you uncomfortable, it's not gonna grow you. Period. Whether it was that move from Pietermaritzburg over to Johannesburg, whether it was that move from Johannesburg over through to the UK, if it's not gonna scare you, it's not gonna grow you. So I mean, now I look back, I'm so used to taking the tube, moving around. I do not own a car in London. I don't need to. I love taking the bus. I love taking the underground, even the overground. I have gear and clothes that literally covers me from the end of my fingertips now to the bottom of my ankle, all the way, put it over my head, that when I walk in January or February, I look like a blanket that has covered me, but you gear for it. And the things that I missed is simple thing like we are spoiled in South Africa. I had a maid, I had a nanny for my daughter. You learn how to do things by yourself. You really genuinely learn how to do things yourself. I go into a Tesco, I carry the bags in my hand, and it feels humbling. It really feels humbling to do that. And I go in, yes, I shop every week, but because you can't carry a lot of things, unlike South Africa, you can put it in the back of your boot. So yeah, I love walking. I'm very happy that the shops are near me. As I said, I don't have a car, and I don't own a house. And the reason why I don't own a house is so that I could have the flexibility. So when I think back of all those things that had me fearful, it's no longer fearful. The one thing I do miss our South Africans. I do have my South African friends. We talk a certain language. We talk about certain things. We do things in a certain way. And I always miss that. I miss my family. I miss my daughter. I miss my parents. I miss just getting into my car, going over to my parents' house, having a good meal with my mother and my dad. So I do miss that. But when I do go to South Africa, I do enjoy those moments. I really do enjoy those moments.
It's beautiful, Linda. And speaking of doing things on your own, BJ, you proud father of 6. Don't have pay TV in Limerick.
Yeah, no. Very poor TV. Very poor TV.
So you eventually hang up the boots. How did you get to the decision to do, okay, what's after rugby? It's a big change with such big responsibility.
Yeah, yes. I don't think you only think about that at the end. I feel like sometimes these things do cross over your mind right in the beginning, even sometimes like, how's this going to go? This hasn't happened yet, really. You kind of got a small contract. I think my first contract wasn't even, I told someone the other day, I don't think my first contract was even £1,000 for the year or something like that, some ridiculous thing.
Wow.
Like in the rands. And you kind of think you made it. And I think that's the thing. It's not. It's like, as they say, the old saying goes, the toughest part is not make it, it's staying there. And continually evolving your game and people analyzing you as a player and moving on to stuff like that. So yeah, I think you do keep on thinking about when this time might come. You obviously playing contact sport that injuries happen all the time, and these things did cross. I had injuries very early in my career, so I had neck surgery already when I was 25. So I was thinking in my late 30s, in my early 30s, well, is this thing still holding together? And I suppose in line with that, you kind of put some things in place, you invest in some property, but you don't really think about it as such. I don't think you think about that day. And even when the day comes, I can tell you very much openly that you still don't know how to deal with it. There's no kind of there to go forward with. It's like evolving your own way. How do you find this? It grows organically in that way. You have your time where you miss the routine of the team. You kind of then thankful you don't travel anymore, but you still want to play. And it's this whole evolvement. But I suppose as your career goes on as well, all the external things change as well. So obviously when I started my career, I wasn't a father. Then as my years in playing, I became a father. So I became a lot more selfish with my time with the family, time with my wife, holidays away. And I suppose being away from the big schedules that we had in South Africa, it definitely helped me being home a lot often in Europe. So leading on to the end, coming to the end, it happened just by, again, not like finishing off, it was an injury, but then I came back from the injury and some things didn't happen format-wise of the coaching staff and stuff, and that was it. And it's no like, oh my words, big send-off. That was it. Lights are off. Like, okay, well, how do you say goodbye? No, that's it, kind of. So, of course, I think only very few have some lavish kind of go away and thanks for coming and here's your kind of retirement check. But I think in that time, I went into a mode of trying to keep busy. I think I did a few long marathon, I suppose a few Ironman, and I did a few kind of cycle races and trying to keep yourself busy and in that current routine. And I think that's part of working it out, finding your way forward. And I think that was the part of me that I didn't realize at that stage, that it was just kind of what's next. And I went straight into coaching in a capacity, and I think it was maybe a little bit too premature. I suppose just naturally you always go into coaching, and then took some time to find out what my next step is. And then I suppose later down the line, COVID hit, and I was starting to do a little bit of consulting around the Scrum stuff. And then COVID put that on a back burner for a little bit. But I knew that was an area that I definitely wanted to go back to because of what I was given over my career. Coaches that believed in me, but also specialist coaching in especially the new format of rugby now. I think it's very much needed, and it was taken upon well. So I wanted to continue that, not because of creating a business, just because it was enjoyable, wake up in the morning doing it. I think that was a key part for me. I was always given this saying around the ship can be unstable at your team, okay, and you can be losses over losses. But if the ship is unstable at home and you're playing overseas, you will be home within a year, whether you're a wife or you got a partner or children or not, doesn't matter. I think the stability around that has definitely put me in a place that I could stay overseas for so many years, and still I'm overseas. And that whole team I have like a full 8 anyway team, but that aspect is huge, and I base everything on that.
Wow, team of 8, man, respect. I have to say that out loud. I'm a father of 2, and I can't even imagine what it must be like with a 17-year-old and a 6-month-old. That is just a new. Is that harder or easier than playing professional rugby?
Yeah, no, I would say you lose the battle after 3 there, Justinas. I mean, that's just, you call it quits. Okay? You just then try and it's treading water. Okay, you never just above shoulder height.
It's incredible, Linda. So you guys are managing to keep that South Africanness, and I think that's a thread that's keeping throughout the conversation today. Is our South Africanness. You often talk about the power of the collective. What is the practical tactics that you use to empower others, to put others in a better position to perform?
Yeah. If I look at my team, so I've got a team of people in South Africa that do a global supply chain role, and I run the source manufacturing plant for Nando's that supplies the Southern Hemisphere. So if you go into a Nando's in South Africa and you pick up a bottle of sauce, whether it's South Africa, whether it's the Middle East or Malaysia, Singapore, or you're in Australia, Sydney, just remember that Nando's sauce is made in South Africa in Midrand by a plant that I manage. when I look at some of the things that I've had to do to bring in this connectiveness, as a leader, first and foremost, people need to believe in themselves. Okay, but a lot of people don't believe in themselves. And I'll tell you, I go back, is bringing the South Africanness. When I did this role, we did something bold and daring, as we South Africans do. I brought a team of supply chain people to do a global job. And that is the first time we got a team of South Africans to do a global job. And that is why I so promote South Africans doing global jobs. Our English is very, very good. We just got an attitude of just getting things done. And the third one is South Africa has been through such tough times throughout our last sort of 20, 30 years, tough and good and challenging, and times to adapt, that our people, the resilience in us, that's just built in our DNA. So whether you're having supply chain issues in Australia, whether you're having supply chain issues going over to the US, our South Africans just know how to do it. And that is why my team does a phenomenal job. So me as a leader, the things that I've had to do is, so this is the other challenge, is I'm in the UK and my team is all in South Africa. And learning how to connect with them virtually has been tough. It has been tough. No matter how many Teams calls you get, no matter how many phone calls you get, no matter how many times you visit them, there's nothing as powerful as just sitting in their presence and engaging with them and connecting. So it has been challenging connecting with my team virtually, and that's something that I've learned. I've done a whole lot of things to make sure that I just stay connected to them through other channels. But what I've been deliberate about is connecting them with each other. As much as the leader is not there, I've been very deliberate and conscious that they sitting in South Africa, that they are connected with each other in a strong way. And going back to my leadership style and how I empower people, I've had to first look at myself as a leader. I talk about the journey of moving and taking these courageous moves and being fearful. I've also had to ask myself, why am I really moving? Am I moving because I'm running away from pain? Or am I moving because I am moving towards a purpose? Now, that's a big difference, because I've heard a lot of South Africans run away from pain, run away from South Africa for whatever reasons. And yes, South Africa does have its challenges. But trust me, I go everywhere around the world, and everywhere around the world's got its challenges as well. Yeah. Whether it's politically, economically, socially, every country has it. And so I've heard a lot of South Africans that moved away because of pain. And I can share very openly, I stay away from those South Africans. I stay away from those South Africans because I love my country. I love my green mamba. And I got family, I got friends there that don't have a choice to leave the country. So I am not looking for news on how bad our politics are right now. I'm looking for good news about the G20 happening in South Africa right now. I'm looking for good stories about amazing South Africans that have done wonderful things around the world, like BJ and myself. So that's what I'm looking for, because it just gives me hope and makes me feel joyful of being a South African. So I stay away from the South Africans that have left because they're running away from pain. And I looked at myself and said, why did I move? I moved, yes, I had a fantastic opportunity with Nando's, but I was destined for it. I was destined for it because it was me, a South African woman of color, going into the global stage and being something to reckon with, that other women that look like me that will say, wow, she could do it, I could do it. And that for me was my purpose. My purpose was saying, how could I go there? How could I be in the UK? How could I hold my flag up high? And how could I be a beacon for lots of people, especially women, to give them hope and say, I could do it. She could do it. I could do it. And whether it is 10 years, 20 years, I could do it. So for me, that reasoning leaving South Africa was important because all that contributed to how I empower my people. As soon as you got a leader that's self-aware, a leader that's conscious, a leader that wants to do all the right things, they automatically know how to bring out the best in their people. I've always given my team courage, being in South Africa, dealing with some of the things that we've had to deal with in South Africa, then also doing a global job. It has been tough. I can't sugarcoat this. We take product to 17 countries around the world. And we've had challenges with our ports. We've had massive challenges with our ports. But what do we do as South Africans? We got a plan A, we got a plan B, we got a plan C. We plan in advance. We got contingency planning, whether we ship the product, whether we air freight the product, but we do it. We just do it. So yeah, that's me. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I love that, Linda. That's so true about South Africans. We make a plan wherever we can, and not only one. There's 2, 3, and contingency, and what next, and even plans for the other people as well. BJ, coming full circle, you left South Africa for Ireland, moved a little bit about Europe, went back to South Africa, back to Ireland. What is it in both cultures that you want to install within your children, and you hope that they carry forward with your legacy plugged in there, of course?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think what we share, and I suppose if you even look at today's world in Ireland, I think we share similarities around everything. Our culture, we love our food, we love they love their Guinness, we love their Guinness as well. They love our beers, Castle, and all the rest of them. And I think we share that alike. We love sport. Culturally, I think they're quite similar. I think there's definitely no similarity between the climate at all, but that's the only one. But the rest we share so much, really. I think it's kind of, even when I put in rugby terms, how we see how passionate these supporters are here in Ireland. When they do go and watch their teams, and when there's an international game, I think parts of the whole stadium can sit together. Even though we're going at each other, we're very competitive, as we know, so are the Irish. But I suppose that's what gives us this kind of similarity. And I think they also come from the more time I've spent here. I think the one thing about the Irish is that quite similar to where we are, and I suppose that's why they're doing so well on the big stage as such a small nation, rugby-wise. They've got this resilience, this kind of real background of when times were tough here in Ireland, the famine and the war that happened, and this is built within them, and they can find a way if need be. My oldest has just been in South Africa recently on a trip. When people ask her where she's from, the first thing she says is South African. I say, no, you're not South African, you're born in Ireland. But I think that's what, if they want to go, that's fine. But I think Ireland will always, wherever we go in the world, have a special place, born here. And I think the Emerald Isle, as they say, on a clear summer's day here, which is not many, but you can see to the shores of the kind of east coast of America. And I mean, the clear days here are incredible. I mean, it's just picturesque with the greenery. It's just magical. And I mean, it's really something to behold. And I've seen many of them, thankfully, because being here so many years. But as much as that, it's the same as Linda. I think there's this kind of attachment to South Africa that we've been home, showed our kids our old school, and there's attachment around that part of South African life that people just don't understand. It's living there, it's experiencing it, it's within the highs and the lows and all that stuff. So I'm sure they have one foot in each country, and I suppose that's the world at the moment. I think it's become so small that they can live and proudly Irish citizens as they are. But when the push comes to shove, we South African supporters, obviously the family supports South Africa. My oldest daughter's been at, I think, obviously our time in France. She's been at school in France, in Ireland, in South Africa, back to Ireland, back to South Africa. I mean, even some of my family would say, listen, can you just settle now? I can tell you right now, if I could travel like my daughter has, I would do that tomorrow. I said, my daughter traveled and she's experienced social environments now that not many at her age have. What that gives her for life, for me, is something that you can't take away from her. She'll now to a social environment where she's been to all these different schools and different languages. She learned a whole new language in France, and et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I would say they are definitely hybrids in the sense of the Irish and South African, which I'm thankful for.
Well, that's so powerful, BJ. I mean, I've seen my own kids. My son is completely fluent in French, learned it in school in Canada, and it's amazing. But I also feel like, especially for him, he's attached to rugby, even though he hasn't played it really himself. And the Springboks in such a way, because it ties his identity. I mean, it obviously is a strong part of my own identity, and he's completely adopted that out of his own choice. But that silent signals, and I think, Linda, I mean, Flip knows I am definitely a crier. I almost cried when you gave that previous answer about running towards something instead of running away from something. And I think there's a lot of difference in those two. But I also really liked what you said about these quiet signals, this permission that you gave by setting the example. And I think for me, I like to travel like this with my Springbok jersey wherever I go. And it just also sends this quiet signal that gives people permission to come and talk to me and you have these amazing conversations. So I want to just go to that sort of full circle. You've done Linda, doing quite a few things to sort of raise awareness, climbed Kilimanjaro and a few other things. And you're very involved in this idea of empowering women and giving them permission to reach for higher peaks. No pun intended. Tell us a little bit about some of that work you've done and how it becomes a fulfilling thing for you as well.
Yeah, so COVID was spectacular for me in so many ways. As much as we were stuck in our homes and we had so many restrictions, I think South Africa had really tough restrictions, sometimes a bit just too tough. But what it allowed me to do is it allowed me to reflect. And I was just so thankful of the time that thankfully nothing happened to any one of my close members in the family. And I think being stuck for so long, it felt like a caged bird. Okay, that when the restrictions were over or coming like loosened up a bit, it was like, oh my word, what can I do? Adventurous can I do? I just want to go do something big, hairy, and audacious. And that big, hairy, and audacious was something I've wanted to do for a while, and that's to get to the top of Africa. Climb Kilimanjaro, train for it. But I partnered with the Nelson Mandela Foundation, and I did it for girls in the townships that do not have access to sanitary wear. Now, it's something so simple. And both you guys, Justinas and BJ, you got daughters, right? Flip, I don't know if you got daughters, but, it's getting that menstrual cycle every month. It's just the body, and it's just the body doing its wonderful things. But here you got girls in the townships in South Africa that cannot go to school for a week, a month, because they do not have access to sanitary wear. So that was very powerful for me. And that then said, coming from the background that I come from, being where I am, which is 5 years ago, how can I give back? So that led me up to Kilimanjaro. That led me to raise a lot of money through very generous South African business people, majority of men, which I'm very thankful for, that contributed to 4,200 girls to have access to sanitary wear for a year so they could finish their matric. And that was just powerful. I visited 9 schools. You go to them, you give them the sanitary wear, they laugh, they dance, they're so excited for this impact. And what I told them is I said, I've climbed the tallest mountain in Africa just for you, just to do this for you. And then that led me to further adventures. Last year, I went to the Andes Mountains. I hiked the Salcante Trail, which is quite tough. The Salcante Trail goes up to 4,200 meters in the Andes Mountains. Absolutely beautiful to see this mountain range down in South America in Peru. Hiked there 7 days, ended at the beginning of the Amazon cloud forest. And then from there, I went over to Machu Picchu on my last day. Absolutely spectacular. From the tough night and day that I went up to Kilimanjaro, where I asked myself many times, what am I doing up this mountain? God, what am I doing here? I felt parts of me was just completely gone. I was completely numb. Getting into Machu Picchu, which was just admiring the beauty of this town and this village that the Inca people built on the top of a mountain. How they took all that stone up the top of that mountain, I have no idea, but absolutely magnificent. You stand there in this village they built that was hidden from the Spanish. And you look there and you just says, wow, I'm just surrounded by mountains and a beautiful sacred place. And I did that for gender-based violence. I did that because South Africa has got a massive issue where there's a high number of women, and I'm talking about women from the townships all the way to Sandton, that sadly go through gender-based violence. So I partnered with a foundation at the time to raise money for women, and it was 3,500 women that we impacted. Yet again, very generous South African business people, mainly men, that contributed so generously towards this. And in this year, a very big year for me, a milestone year for me, is I celebrated my birthday. And guys, women don't say our age, but it was the big 50. We don't say our age, it's big 50. Something very special that I did, I went up to Mount Fuji in Japan, my first time in Japan. And I did that to raise money for children in South Africa that don't know how to read. There is thousands of children in the township that just don't know how to read, don't have access to reading at an early age. So this organization helped to read, where the founders of that charity are British founders that I met beginning of this year. And I just loved what they do for South Africa as a family to make a difference. And that impacted thousands of children to be able to read.
Beautiful. That's amazing, Linda. Thank you for sharing. As we come to the end, we have a little tradition on Winning the Away Game podcast. We'll let our guests ask each other a question. Ladies first.
Yeah. So BJ, I love it that you got a big family. I was wondering, is he going to get to making a rugby team at some point? Is he moving in that direction? I think for me, a question is, and I read the story about Owen, and I think you guys as a couple, I admire what you've gone through with Owen. Just a question for everyone in the room is, what is like one thing that as your children have taught you and Tanya, you and Tanya, what have they taught you?
Keepers, yeah, that's a tough one. I think, they've definitely, in one sense, taught us love, that unconditional love, I suppose, that you don't really know exists between you have your partner and your wife or your husband. But I think when you have the children, then they come along in that unconditional love and that side of things, which is obviously, in one sense, quite general. But I think in our aspect, we've had some dynamics in our family that have really been tested, especially having a long-term sick child like Owen. And the dynamics are tested. And it shows the one thing that comes naturally should be anyway, is that children teach you how things should come naturally. And it's a caring about this aspect of without any boundaries and that side of things. That's what my children have shown. Owen will be like this. Hopefully not. We might find something down the line. But I think as this moves forward, it's these new things come along where the kids show what they are and how everything just comes from the heart, really. In one sense, of course they're their siblings, but I think we I have a massive thing about how that's just organically grown. It's nothing from us. They've just shown how that caring and that environment has been created around Owen, being very aware that it's not only about Owen. I always say that about, listen, I know growing up with friends that I have that have had a sick child with them, and I think very cautious going into details now. We're probably not, but aware of that side of things, where everyone is as important to the family circle. It doesn't come naturally at times to realize that and to push forward. Thanks for a great question, Linda. I won't lie to you. I don't know what to top your list with. Other than, I think it's a simple question. But actually talking about, we didn't have much time, maybe talk about the Nando side of things. But I will tell you that obviously, as we know, Nando's is just you're South African away from South Africa, isn't it? Maybe just a simple enough question in the sense of Nando's. the menu as such. Why do some of the ingredients or some of the kind of what's on the menu not in South Africa it kind of happen in Europe and vice versa? I remember us stopping over at this one in Cork, and we're like having the hummus and the kind of pizza bread with the chili oil. And I don't think you can get that in South Africa. Is that just valued on the customer? Maybe it's a particular question, but I thought I'd just ask you.
Yeah, no, I'll actually answer that. The one thing I do love about Nando's is that we're not cookie cuts. In every country, you got your peri-peri chicken on the bone.
Yep.
You got your delicious burgers and pittas and all the other delicious products that is just core. And then you've got what is for the local country and what the local country people enjoy.
Okay.
You got your nuances in South Africa that you wouldn't find in the UK or Ireland or the US or Australia. And then you've got certain things in Dubai that you'll have, like this amazing espetada that comes in this beautiful stand that you wouldn't find elsewhere. So we've got about 20% of the menu that's specifically designed for the customer in that country.
Interesting. Well, that's great. No, that answers my question. Sorry, it wasn't more business-like.
Yeah, it's fine.
But it does answer a long-awaited question that we've always been thinking, stopping at this Nando's or wherever you are. Why don't they serve this prego roll with this whatever? That's the things. But anyway,
I would say that one of my favorite little nuances of Nando's was in Singapore. When I was there for a week, I managed to visit all 6 Nando's in Singapore and drove across the border to go to one in Malaysia. But in Singapore, on the burgers, they have this grilled cheese, which is the most amazing thing I've ever tasted. It is fantastic.
You are such a fan, Justina, such a fan. All 6 in Singapore. Amazing.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate your time and thanks for sharing with us. It's just so amazing to hear South African stories from abroad. So thank you very much for being here and being on the Winning the Away Game podcast.
Thank you, Linda and BJ. It's great to see you. BJ, I'll see you this weekend and hopefully the Bokke win.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure, guys. A pleasure, Linda. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Well done.